Kicking off the list at number 10, we have Hawkeye. As funny as it might sound to put Hawkeye first on a list about dangerous Avengers members, he's not to be messed with. And in the MCU, Hawkeye's had it pretty rough. He had his mind controlled in the first Avengers, he took out eyeballs for Loki, yuck. And then he comes out of retirement for like 2 hours, comes Civil War, and then he gets arrested and sent to the Raft. And then his family disappears. So we catch up with Clint 5 years after Thanos snapped his dirty fingers, and we find him in Tokyo, and he's not the same guy that we once knew at all. He's taken out criminals, this time he's doing it the hard way, and he's suited up as a different character altogether. He's back this time as Ronin. And this is a dark time. He takes out so many people, and he takes them out violently as well. He uses his skills to do it in such a brutal assassin way. I mean, I know you're upset because your entire family disappeared while you were eating hot dogs with mayo. That's fair, but so was the rest of the world, okay? They were affected too. Stick to the arrow, leave the hood and the sword down. Stay Hawkeye, stay nice. And before we continue on with this list of dangerous Avenger members, guys, if you want to go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, that would mean a lot. It helps this channel out so much. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Now let's get right back into this list. Number 9, Bucky Barnes. Near the end of World War II, Bucky and Cap were trying to disarm a bomb on a plane while taking down Baron Zemo. Now the bomb went off, hurling Steve and Bucky into the freezing waters, and well, as for Cap, you know his story. He remained frozen, came back out of the ice years later, still mentally and physical at his peak, but this wasn't the case for Bucky. His body fell into the freezing waters, and at the time, a Soviet spy submarine was in the area crossing between the English Channel, so they scooped him up, made him a fancy new metal arm, brainwashed him, and turned him into a brutal assassin with the help of Hydra's own super soldier serum. He joined the Avengers officially in the New Avengers issue 48. Now Bucky is of course considered an Avenger now in the MCU, but during the Civil War storyline, we saw just how brutal he could be as an assassin. He took out all of the Avengers once he broke out with Zemo's help. Number 8, SENTRY. He made his first appearance in SENTRY issue 1. Meet Robert Reynolds. He was a struggling addict who made his way into a laboratory and discovered something called the Golden Sentry Serum. And then he got the surprise of a lifetime when he was given the power of 1 million exploding suns. Now that plus a homemade costume equals superhero. Sounds pretty good. But he's a quite dangerous superhero. I mean, of course, the whole million sun thing. Robert fought alongside the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and then of course, the New Avengers. Things changed for Robert when Norman Osborn decided to put together a team of his own. This was the Dark Avengers where he made the switch. Sentry's a pretty powerful being as well. I mean, he was once a horseman of death, where he even considered himself as the heir to Apocalypse, so he's up there. Number 7, Wolverine. James Howlett, a Canadian mutant and popular member of the X-Men who we all should know by now. He describes himself as being the best at what he does, but what he does isn't very nice. He has an accelerated healing factor, sharp senses, sharp claws, and of course the adamantium coating on his bones thanks to the Weapon X program. So the claws are what make Logan unique. He is a fierce, brutal warrior with them, and he has the rage of a beast and the soul of a samurai. Put that all together and you have quite a fierce Avenger. He joined the Avengers in New Avengers issue 6. He obtains the Muramasa blade, and so begins his quest for revenge. He's pretty dangerous too, the whole healing factor, the rage, his memories coming and going. I'm really hoping that with Deadpool 3 in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, now that Marvel has him back, I really hope we can see the Avengers recruit these mutants on the big screen as well. It'd be fun to see them together. After all, Deadpool 3 was supposed to be a road trip with them too as well, so we got to see somewhat of a version of that. Number 6, Mockingbird. Barbara Morse made her comic book debut in Astonishing Tales issue 12. She studied at Georgia Institute of Technology, specializing in biology, and she worked with Dr. Wilma Calvin on Project Gladiator. Now the project was set to recreate the super soldier serum that created Captain America. Everybody was trying this. It worked and failed multiple times. But during this time, S.H.I.E.L.D. trained Bobby to be a spy. They also gave her the cool nickname of Agent 19. I mean, yeah, she was so good at gymnastics and flips, it would be stupid not to make her a superhero at this point. So she became Mockingbird in the 80s with Marvel Team Up issue 95. In 2011, she became a super soldier in New Avengers 13, so she finally has powers. When she was on the verge of dying, she was injected with this other version of the serum, and it saved her, thankfully. But it of course also gave her new super soldier abilities. She's skilled in hand-to-hand combat, like Kung Fu and Taekwondo, and she's known to be pretty dangerous when fighting in close quarters. Of course, being familiar in weaponry as well. She was one of the founding members of the West Coast Avengers, but she also was part of the New Avengers and the Secret Avengers as well. So she's been around for quite a bit. Fans actually got their hope up that Barbara would appear in the MCU. They actually thought Erin Kellyman was Mockingbird, but alas, she was revealed to be Flag Smasher, or leader of the Flag Smashers in the MCU. Number 5, She-Hulk. Jennifer Walters made her comic book debut in Savage She-Hulk issue 1. She's a brilliant lawyer who just happened to be the cousin of Bruce Banner. So when she was shot by Nicholas Trask, yeah, she was shot while she was defending a criminal who had been double-crossed by Trask. And she was also spreading rumors that she had enough evidence to lock away Trask, so he lashed out and shot her. So now, in order to save her life, a blood transfusion was required from none other than her family, the Hulk himself. She joined the Avengers in issue 221. Now, what makes Jen Walters stand out as a Hulk is that she's able to control her abilities, unlike Bruce. Tatiana Mason Lee is actually set to play the powerful Avenger in Disney's upcoming She-Hulk, set to release in 2022, and I can't wait to see how powerful she is on the big screen as well. Number 4, US Agent. John Walker, perhaps one of the most dangerous members to ever join the Avengers ranks. We're seeing this unfold currently in the MCU in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So this war hero in the show was nominated to become the replacement of Steve Rogers, and this happened in the comics as well. This happened when Steve Rogers had to abandon his identity due to the Red Skull's manipulation of the Commission on Superhuman Activities. So somebody had to suit up, so the government needed this new figure, and in issue 333 of Captain America, titled The Replacement, we saw just who that was. He took on the role of Captain America briefly, but after he left, he returned again, but this time in his own version of a blacked out Captain America suit, and the shield is also less spangly. He comes back as US Agent and he's put to the test. He's forced to battle an Ironmonger, and he wants to take it down alone, because, you know, he's cool. The shield seems to work out for him pretty well, and in the comics, it was actually Taskmaster who trained him how to properly use that shield, who we have yet to see in the MCU because Black Widow is still delayed. Now yes, eventually he did join the Avengers. In West Coast Avengers issue 45, the government wanted an official in there to make sure all was running smoothly, so they sent in John Walker. I feel like the finale for Falcon and the Winter Soldier is going to be the introduction of the Thunderbolts, and I really hope US Agent joins a version of the Dark Avengers, because he's an amazing actor. I'm not quite done with him yet. Number 3, Quicksilver. The twin brother of Wanda Maximoff. I figured it was a great time to mention this speedy Avenger. Pietro Maximoff is the twin brother of Wanda, and in Avengers West Coast issue 57, he joined the team. Now, Pietro had been trouble for the team for a while now. I mean, he convinced Wanda to do what she did in the House of M storyline. He's framed the Avengers for treason at one point, and he was fully okay with exposing his daughter Luna to Terrigen. He's kind of the worst. That's actually how Luna got her abilities, but still, bad parenting 101. In West Coast Avengers issue 33, Magneto's bloodline got the best of him, and he got fellow Avengers captured by the communist gang. Even in the MCU, Quicksilver was first introduced as a villain. He and Wanda were actually both Team Hydra in the start. Now his super speed is not to be toyed with. He's quite powerful. In Marvel Zombies, Quicksilver gets tricked by Mystique, he gets bit, and then with his incredible speed powers, he's able to turn everybody into zombies all around the world within minutes. The situation went from bad to unstoppable thanks to Quicksilver. Number 2, Scarlet Witch. She's a daughter of Magneto and the twin brother of Quicksilver, who I just mentioned, so now's a pretty good time to mention her as well. She was on her father's Brotherhood of Evil Mutants, but most of us would consider Wanda one of the strongest Avengers. She's one of the biggest Marvel characters ever, and during those events of M-Day, she spoke 3 words: no more mutants. And just like that, a mass amount of mutants were depowered, or worse. Now that large number was 986,000, so only leaving a couple hundred left. In the MCU as well, we just watched Wanda go through quite the trauma. In WandaVision, we saw this over the course of 9 weeks, where she had a mental breakdown, kind of similar to M-Day, and she trapped Westview in her hex. Now, of course, by the end of the show, she frees everybody and things look pretty back to normal-ish, but with that after-credit scene of her studying the Darkhold, and with the given knowledge that Wanda is in the next Doctor Strange movie, I feel like we've only scratched the surface of the Scarlet Witch's true abilities. And finally, coming in at number 1, we have Vision. Of course, Wanda's hubby, android hubby. The Vision is an advanced android to say the least. I mean, he came back from the dead in WandaVision, and now he's matching his West Coast Avengers look more than ever, that all-white android look. He was first introduced in Avengers issue 57, created by Ultron using parts of the original Human Torch and the mind of Wonder Man. A little different than the MCU. He then turned on his original creator and joined the Avengers. In the MCU, he's created for Ultron's new body, but with the addition of the Mind Stone and a little bit of Jarvis, we now have this android Avenger. But during the Secret Empire storyline, Vision was part of Hydra's Avengers when they were taking over the world. He used an AI virus to take him over, he being Arnim Zola. A robot gone rogue is quite compelling, especially when he's as strong as the Vision. In the first issue, he's put to the test when the other Avengers are fighting him. He's easily able to take them all on. As long as he's on the good side, we should be okay. Otherwise, it's just gonna be a hot mess.
Number 10, Black Widow. The Avengers in the Ultimate Universe are different from their main continuity counterparts, as while the Avengers in 616 are a team of bona fide heroes brought together by massive and often global threats, the Avengers of Earth 1610 were brought together by Nick Fury and are often a team composed of former villains and kinda anti-heroes, people less marketable generally than 1610's Ultimates, which are like the equivalent to the 616's Avengers. Instead, the Avengers from 1610 end up becoming more comparable to DC's Suicide Squad, a team of reluctant participants who are forced to work together to complete missions for S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury. Monica Chang, however, was not one of the more criminal-based members of the team, and instead was the new Black Widow. She was given the mantle of Black Widow after the death of Natasha, who it turned out was a traitor to S.H.I.E.L.D., the Ultimates, and the USA. Monica was with the Avengers team from day one, joining them on their first mission to apprehend Steve Rogers, aka Captain America, and locate and put a stop to the Red Skull. Monica doesn't have any superpowers, but is a trained agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. She is a skilled spy, combatant, and is experienced with various types of firearms, though typically is known for wielding 2 pistols. While wearing her Stark suit, she also possessed enhanced strength and speed. However, she was still a normal human, and as such was still able to be killed fairly easily when she went up against the immortal Green Goblin. Poor Monica though, I feel like that whole thing kinda did her dirty because, you know, she actually survived for a long time prior to that. So it was really weird that she was like, I'm gonna go into this fight and I'm gonna be super unprepared. Hey, then you die. That's what happens. Monica should know that. Number 9. The Punisher. The Punisher in the reality of Earth 1610 was a member of both Nick Fury's Howling Commandos, who fought against the Maker's Dark Ultimates, and a member of Fury's Avengers. The Punisher's powers are basically the same as his Earth 616 counterpart. In other words, he doesn't really have any superpowers. He's mostly just a man who is really skilled in his use of various firearms. He was a trained police officer with the NYPD, so has lots of tactical training and experience. The first time he joined the Avengers, it was to protect the Vice President against Ghost Rider, but the spirit of vengeance convinced Frank to stand down, and even assist him in the end, also helping him to escape. The Punisher would also escape S.H.I.E.L.D. custody following the mission, but would later be recruited once more by Fury after he ended up in prison. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list, if you want more Ultimate lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Also, check out our Ultimate Marvel Universe playlist for more videos like this. Number 8. Red Wasp. Red Wasp initially went by the name of Swarm and was a member of the antagonistic Liberators team. She was believed to have been killed in the fight between the Liberators and the Ultimates by the Wasp, Janet Van Dyne, who became giant and stepped on Swarm. However, Petra Laskov managed to survive, saved by S.H.I.E.L.D. and put into rehabilitation by them. Rehabilitation. She was made to work for them and join up with their Avengers team. They even placed an obedience chip within her to make sure that she followed orders. Rehabilitation. During her time with S.H.I.E.L.D., Petra would take up the mantle Red Wasp. She can shrink herself down to the size of an insect and can control large swarms of insects as well. However, because of her insect-like abilities, she can also be defeated using insect repellent. So, pretty cool powers, but with a pretty big weakness. Number 7. Blade. Blade was recruited to the Avengers by Nick Fury, who promised to deliver him Deacon Frost in exchange for his service. Frost is the man responsible for killing Blade's mother and turning him into the creature that he is, in case you didn't know that. Blade helped to apprehend Tyrone Cash after S.H.I.E.L.D. learned he was responsible for selling off their super soldiers on the black market. Blade incapacitated Cash through hypnosis. Ooh, supernatural powers. However, despite him being part vampire, Blade is not as tough as you'd expect, especially in comparison to the tough version of the character we know from the Earth 616. Iron Man found that out when he basically crushed the poor anti-hero. Blade's time serving as part of the Ultimate Avengers may have also helped to get him on the main continuity Avengers team of Earth 616 in the future. I also gotta say, I really love Blade as an addition to the 616 Avengers. I don't know if everybody else is super enjoying that, but I'm really enjoying that. Are you enjoying that? I hope you are. Number 6. Hawkeye. But wait a minute, isn't Hawkeye a member of the Ultimates? Well, yes, he has been that too, but hey, he can do both. Hawkeye, despite being more of a bona fide hero, still had a pretty shady past, which was what made him a great candidate for the Avengers team. Nick Fury invited him to join originally when they went on the hunt for Red Skull, and Barton agreed. In fact, I believe Hawkeye actually helped to bring this team together as well. The Avengers team for him was like a Black Ops group willing to do the dirty work that the Ultimates couldn't be seen getting involved in. Often this meant the villains they went after usually ended up dead. Such was the case with Red Skull in the end. Hawkeye might just seem like a guy with a bow, and well, he is. But he is really good with that bow. He has enhanced vision, which allows him to see much farther and clearer than your average human, and he is an extremely skilled fighter, pilot, and spy. So, you know. Also, he's deadly with fingernails, so watch yourself if you're just facing him as he is. If he's got fingernails, he's got weapons. Number 5. War Machine. War Machine is James Rhodes, who became a close friend to Iron Man and ended up being gifted a suit of armor from Tony to use in his own heroic adventures. He would end up being recruited and serve on the revived Avengers project as a member of the team during their first mission, where they attempted to defeat and capture Red Skull. Rhodey happened to be armed with a nuke to use against the Red Skull as part of a last resort plan, if needed. But the Red Skull had overheard about this plan and said nuke, and so managed to disable it easily using the Cosmic Cube. Honestly, if the Red Skull didn't have the Cosmic Cube though at this time, my money would have definitely been on War Machine in this fight, because War Machine I think is pretty powerful. War Machine would also for a time gain temporary Hulk-like powers after being given some of Tyrone Cash's Hulk serum. Number 4. Nerd Hulk. While Nerd Hulk is a very powerful character in terms of his abilities being on the same level of power as Bruce Banner's Hulk from Earth 1610, he tends to end up being not so powerful in actuality when battling other people. This is because he has a tendency to hold back though. Nerd Hulk is a clone that Gregory Stark, Tony Stark's brother, created. Nerd Hulk prefers to try and resolve conflicts using logic as opposed to violence, and it is the marriage of his intellect and strength combined that holds him back from being as deadly as he could be. Still, the potential is there, and he does have access to the same amount of strength and ferocity as Banner if he'd only feel inclined to use it. Nerd Hulk was a member of the Avengers team when they were first resurrected and went after Red Skull. He would also later attempt to join the Ultimates, but he was denied membership. Sad. Poor Nerd Hulk. I love him with his little glasses. Number 3. Gregory Stark. Gregory Stark is like the evil brother of Tony Stark. He is the more immoral of the two when it comes to technology, but is more put together overall in comparison to his brother. Much less of a mess, if you will. This obviously made him a valuable asset to S.H.I.E.L.D. and Nick Fury, and so he ended up on the Avengers team. However, Gregory was also super smart, and was using his time working with S.H.I.E.L.D. to put certain plans into action that would allow him to take over control and eventually kind of rule the world, sort of. After Fury seemingly went rogue and Carol Danvers was also removed from the chessboard, Gregory was made the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and attempted to use his influence and nanite tech to cause chaos and war to erupt in other nations. Fortunately, he would be defeated by his brother Tony, who disabled his nanites with an EMP, allowing Thor to take him down. Still, for a time, Gregory was a pretty valuable member of the Avengers team, and later a formidable villain to them and to the Ultimates. And for that, he gets some bonus points. That's what I say. Gold Star Gregory Stark. That's what I call him. For evilness, I guess. Number 2. Tyrone Cash. Tyrone Cash was a fairly powerful version of the Hulk, and actually was the first Hulk to exist in the Ultimate Universe. He created the Hulk serum before his protege Bruce Banner was able to, and decided to use it on himself. This gave him massive strength, and he took the name Tyrone Cash, and decided to become a criminal, using his brilliant intellect to avoid capture for longer than a decade. Previously, he'd been known as the Scientist and as Banner's mentor, Professor Leonard Williams. Eventually, Cash was apprehended and forced to join the Avengers team, and after S.H.I.E.L.D. learned that he'd betrayed them, Fury had him executed. So of course, who's the most powerful? Who could it be? Number 1. Nick Fury. When it comes to the Avengers team, Nick Fury is like the Amanda Waller of it all, in comparison to the Ultimate Avengers DC counterpart, which would likely be the Suicide Squad. Nick Fury was the one to resurrect Project Avengers, and while he claimed this was done to hunt down the Red Skull, Captain America's villainous son in this reality, it is actually believed that Fury had orchestrated Red Skull's return in order to get his job back as director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and resurrect the old abandoned Avengers project. That's just so Nick Fury, I'm just saying. Nick Fury holds a lot of power not just as a master spy who often deals in secrets, but also because he was exposed to the super soldier serum and has influence over the rest of the Avengers team as their overall leader and organizer. He's just got a lot of power. He's also like got a million plans, so if you're like, oh, I know how we'll beat Nick Fury, he probably already has a plan for if you try to do that to him. That's how good he is.
Number 10, Bullseye. What do you do when you have a supervillain whose power is being able to hit practically any target? Well, you have him replace a superhero who can pretty much do the same. Bullseye, a mysterious assassin who we still don't even know the full name of beyond Lester Somebody, is most well known for frequently clashing with Daredevil and being under the employ of Kingpin. However, after using his sociopathic talents during the Skrull invasion and aiding the Thunderbolts, Bullseye was given the position of being a replacement Hawkeye, a position he kept threatening to lose as his murder sprees began drawing more and more attention to the villainous side of Osborn's Avengers team. Who knows, maybe we'll get a season 2 of the Disney Plus Hawkeye show and get to see an evil Hawkeye on screen after all.
Number 9, Toxie. Toxie is one of the worst there is out there. She is June Covington, a post-grad who was working at NYU and became obsessed with perfecting the human genetic code. She succeeded in doing so and aimed to use her research to fix a man who she found to be perfect except for a birth defect in his arm. In issue number 1 of Osborn, we learned that the man, Edward Wynn, would however refuse her help and attempt to have her imprisoned for her extreme research methods and basically eugenics-focused science. But she'd get back at him later on. Claiming to have changed her ways, she lured him to her lab, paralyzed him, and then left him trapped there to rot. Toxie ends up joining the Dark Avengers team following Norman Osborn's escape from the raft. She becomes the new Scarlet Witch of his team and also ends up romantically involved with Norman, despite initially showing disinterest in him the first time they met when she was drumming up money to fund her research.
Number 8, Ares. Tell me if you've heard this one before. The gods of one of mankind's most well-spread mythologies are actually advanced beings from their own unique pocket dimension, so powerful and advanced compared to the people of Earth that we can only qualify them as godlike. Well, this is the explanation given in the Marvel Universe for both the Greek and Norse gods, and perhaps that's why Norman Osborn was able to use them so interchangeably when searching for a replacement Thor. While the Greek god of war Ares had been on good terms with the Avengers before Osborn was placed in charge, he was one of the few superpowered beings who saw nothing wrong with the change in leadership and would go on to lead the Dark Avengers assault on Asgard. Asgard may be gone in the MCU already, but that doesn't mean I'm still not itching to see Thor and Loki take on another Pantheon's god. Bring it on, Marvel.
Number 7, Aya Peak. Aya Peak is one of the alternate darker versions of Spider-Man. Overall, a pretty deadly and cool character inspired by an actual worshipped and feared deity of the Mochi civilization, which flourished in northern Peru from the 1st to 8th century CE. Pretty neat stuff. Aya Peak ended up joining Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers team that was assembled after he escaped the raft. I think he'd be a cool character to have for his overall appearance. He has like snakes for hair, fangs, and a spider-like body with multiple limbs, but he'd also just be cool to act as an anti-Spider-Man, being literally a man, or well, god really, who is part spider but is known for his more cruel and violent approach. His name is really Aya Peak the Decapitator, so yeah. Also, what's up with Dark Avengers and gods? Apparently that's a thing.
Number 6, Scar. You might have heard that the Hulk briefly lived as a gladiator on the distant world of Sakaar, but did you know that in the comics he wound up actually having a son from this adventure? The offspring of the Hulk and Kyera the Old Strong, Scar's mother died so that he might live during the destruction of his planet, and eventually made his way back to Earth following in his father's footsteps. While initially seen as a threat by many of the world's heroes, Scar wound up being one of the few Dark Avengers to redeem himself. He was secretly a double agent for Steve Rogers all along, right under Norman Osborn's nose. The Hulk's always been one of my favorite characters in the MCU, and seeing him deal with father and son issues would bring a whole lot of drama to everyone's favorite universe, and I personally can't wait.
Number 5, Daken. I mean, we should probably get Wolverine and the rest of the mutant crew in the MCU first, but as soon as they are in, this is one of the people I want immediately thereafter. Daken is the son of Wolverine, who actually currently goes by his given name of Akihiro in the comics. Daken was actually a cruel nickname that Akihiro initially just adopted as his own. Daken in Japanese basically translates to cur or mongrel in English, and was used in reference to the fact that Akihiro was mixed race. His mother was a Japanese woman, Itsu, who was murdered before she could give birth to him, and his father was Wolverine, who believed that their unborn child had also been killed along with his wife, and therefore did not know that he'd actually been stolen and survived following Itsu's death. which was pretty awkward later. Daken was raised to hate his father and would grow up to become a villain and specifically an enemy to Wolverine. Norman would recruit Daken to become his stand-in Wolverine for his Dark Avengers team, which I love.
Number 4, Ragnarok. We've already had one Thor replacement on this list, but luckily the Dark Avengers were having a buy one get one free sale and threw in an evil cyborg clone as a bonus. Eventually going under the apocalyptic Norse moniker of Ragnarok, this clone was originally made by Tony Stark, based off a strand of hair that the billionaire stole after his first encounter with the Asgardian. During the events of Civil War, Tony unleashed this mad clone as a deterrent against the anti-registration side of the conflict, and received a ton of backlash when the clone wound up being more powerful than intended and eventually had to be destroyed by the god Hercules. Nevertheless, cyborg clones just don't die, and Ragnarok was given his new codename as a member of the Dark Avengers and lending muscle to Norman Osborn's new reign of terror. Could you imagine seeing this guy in the MCU? I'm sure Chris Hemsworth is down for playing double the roles, right?
Number 3, Moonstone. Moonstone is someone I've wanted for a while in the MCU. She's not only the Dark Avengers stand-in for Carol Danvers as their Miss Marvel, but has also been a member of the Thunderbolts as well. So it seems doubly likely that we'll get her eventually. Norman chose Carla Sofin to become his Miss Marvel after Carol refused to join Osborn's team. Carla also would become an antagonist to Carol herself, as well as having history with the Marvel name prior to that. I really am eager to see Captain Marvel and Moonstone face off in the MCU, so I'm really hoping that Carla does end up joining our new darker hero team that seems to be slowly forming. I can't wait.
Number 2, GARGAN. Spider-Man has had more than his fair share of animal-themed villains over the years, but few have had as many twists and turns in their persona as GARGAN, most commonly known as the Scorpion. Originally hired as a private investigator by J. Jonah Jameson to learn more about our beloved wall-crawler, Gargan's rivalry with the Webhead ascended into supervillainry when he was paid $10,000 to undergo a procedure giving him all the proportional strength of, you guessed it, a scorpion. But that's far from the only name Gargan has gone under, as for a time he was also the host of the Venom symbiote, appearing much larger and more violent than the villain ever had before. This insane level of violence made it all the more worrying when Norman Osborn shrank down Gargan's symbiote so that he could more easily fit in as the Dark Avengers version of the beloved Spider-Man. Now, technically GARGAN has already appeared in Spider-Man Homecoming without any superpowers yet, but come on Marvel Studios, we need to see Nacho from Better Call Saul wearing a symbiote suit pronto.
Number 1, Iron Patriot. Yep, you maybe guessed it. Iron Patriot is probably one of my favorite Dark Avengers around and is also our number 1 spot. He also happens to be both the leader of the team and of Hammer, the organization behind the Dark Avengers. That's right, Iron Patriot is none other than Norman Osborn, who stands in as a version of the Avengers' Iron Man. Of course, he is much more sinister and obsessive than any version of Tony could ever be. And sadly, he also kind of ruined the Iron Patriot name. Poor Rhodey. Norman as Iron Patriot is not only a team member, but is also the one who ultimately decides who he wants on his team, recruiting other villains and turning them into alternate versions of superheroes. I also just selfishly want Norman Osborn in the MCU for Spider-Man because he's such a great villain overall for Spidey, but then again, he also has proven himself as a great villain just overall in the comics, so to see him as like a big bad would also be pretty cool.